right, let me get that mic unmuted there. Hello, guys. It is my new favorite time of the week. Again, it is Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Time for me to go live, spend some time with you guys out there, talk a little bit about different filmmaking aspects, share a little bit of my knowledge, and field some questions, and basically just hang out for 45 minutes to an hour or however long we end up running. So guys, I welcome you to come and join in and chat with me. Again, for those of you who might not know me, otherwise I don't know how you wound up here, but just in case, I am Bart Johnson. I'm a cinematographer based in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm also a YouTuber, and it's here on YouTube that I like to share my filmmaking knowledge and experience and hang out with others out there in the filmmaking community around the world. And these live shows are a great way to do that. So if you are catching the playback of this, that's okay. There's going to be plenty of information in here for you. But if you are here live, that's where the fun is. So that's where you can comment and join in, and I'll take questions along the way and maybe do a little Q&A at the end. But the topic that I have for today is regarding the issue of 4K. So originally, as of a few days ago, I had titled this show basically all about 4K. What is 4K? What are the pros and cons and all that? And I realized I've done a video on my channel all about that already. So I went into great detail, broke down what it is and all sorts of stuff like that. And so I figured, why am I going to do that redundantly? And I'll put a link for you guys for that video if you want to go check it out, and it'll be in the description down below as well. But instead, what I wanted to do is I wanted to focus on some of the ways that you can utilize 4K if you are shooting it. And specifically, if you're using 4K, if you're shooting in 4K, but your final delivery is going to be in 1080p. And I'll explain a little bit about why you would do that and what some of the benefits are of doing that and some of the tricks that you can do using 4K. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to double check here. Last week we had some streaming issues, but I believe that was all on YouTube's end, because I saw some other streamers were having issues around the exact same time, and we are holding good. So I think I might have this technical beast figured out, but I probably shouldn't have just said that before diving in. So we'll go ahead and dive in. Not sure if we have anybody in here with us right now. I've got my chat pulled up, but if anybody does pop in, please feel free to comment and everything like that. So, and my wife is messaging me, and it pops up on every device in here. But anyway, we'll get right into it. So first I want to start off talking to you guys a little bit about what 4K is, just in case you're not familiar or don't really know all the technical stuff about it. Again, not going to go into super extreme detail. I have all that information in another video that's already on my channel that you can find in the description below. But just to get us started on today's sort of lesson here, let's go into that. So what I'm going to do here, let's see if this works, if I did it right. I'm going to pull up my Adobe Premiere screen. Okay, so here I have Adobe Premiere CC 2017, whatever the latest all updated version is. Not really important. 4K is going to work the same in whatever software you're using, as long as it can handle 4K, obviously. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what is 4K. So 4K, in its most literal broken down sense, is 4 times 1080. So if I bring this up to a full screen here, if you had a 4K resolution screen, which I'm not streaming in 4K, but we'll just pretend, literally it means that 4 1080 screens would fit inside of it. It does not mean that it's 4 times the height and 4 times the width. It means that it's double the height and double the width, and that means there are 4 screens in there. So that's where you get this terminology of 4K. Technically it's 4,000 and all the pixels and all that stuff. And I do want to get into some of the pixels, because there are 2 different kinds of 4K that are shot out there, and sometimes people get a little bit confused. So let's go over that here. So what we have is we have what's called UHD 4K, which is ultra high definition 4K. But then there's also another kind of 4K that we see a lot mentioned, which is called DCI 4K. So there you go. So this will show you a little bit about the difference in the sizes and the resolution. So what DCI 4K is it stands for Digital Cinema Initiatives, and it's actually a little bit wider, same height of 2,160 pixels, but it's a little bit wider than traditional 4K. And there's a reason that it's there, and it's cinema, is because if you look at this, let me get to it, UHD is 16:9 aspect ratio. And what that means is that's what most of our screens are. That's what most of our monitors are. That's what most of our television sets are, and everything like that. And so 16:9 is what we're used to seeing and what fits most of our screens. And so UHD 4K is usually what we're referring to when we're talking about 4K. At least when you're talking about it usually for YouTube or especially for television sets and stuff like that, we're talking about UHD 4K. The true purists will say that it's not really 4K because it's, just under in terms of the pixels. It's 4K. It's what everybody calls 4K. It's like calling a soda a Coke, okay? It's 4K. So that's what it is. So let's move right along. And so, like I said, what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is I really wanted to get into, if you're shooting in that 4K resolution, but you're delivering a project in 1080p, say your client has no need for 4K, or whatever you're working on really doesn't need to be in 4K, or you don't have a distribution for it in 4K, even though YouTube and stuff can do 4K these days. But you want to do it in 1080, should you still be shooting in 4K, and do you gain any benefits? Well, my answer to that is yes. You do gain some benefits from it. And so I'm going to show you some of those benefits today, and I'm going to show you how to edit using your 4K footage, dropping it into a 1080p timeline, and some of the stuff you can do. So let's get back into Premiere here. And we'll go and move right along. Timothy, I do see your question there. I'm just going to go a little bit further into this, and then I'll get to your question. But thank you for joining in. So what we'll do here is, okay. So 4K versus 1080 here. So this is a 4K video, but just the middle of it is the resolution that's taken up by 1080. So basically what we get is we get a windowed little segment of the screen. And what this means is that it allows us to do stuff like punching in. It allows us to do reframing. It allows us to sometimes get tricky and create multiple shots in one. And it also allows us to do stabilization tricks and all sorts of fake motion in post. And I'm going to show you some quick examples of each of those. So let me show you what happens when we drop a 4K clip into a 1080p timeline. So I have a timeline here. I'll prove to you here. 4K dropped into 1080. It is 1920 by 1080 pixels. So this is a 1080 timeline, 1080 sequence, and I'm gonna drop a 4K clip into it. So here I have a clip shot on my Blackmagic Ursa Mini, and it is 4K, 3840 by 2160. So you can see there, this is UHD 4K. That's why people who are the purists say that it's not true 4K, because it's only 3,840 pixels and not technically over 4,000 pixels. Whatever, it's UHD, we're working with it. We can argue about it some other day. But anyway, this is my 4K clip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this clip, and it's some footage when I was doing a review of the Aperture COB120D. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, and I'm going to drop it into my timeline. So I just dropped 4K into 1080. Now when we look at it, something's up here, right? So if we play it and we take a look at it in full screen here, obviously it looks a little bit closer than we had anticipated when we were shooting that. So what exactly is going on here? So what is happening is exactly what I showed here. 4K, and we are taking just that center part because that's all that 1080 can see, which means that there's tons and tons of other information all around the outside. So when we go in here, what we need to do, and this is for Premiere Pro, you can do it via the other methods for various editing systems, but what I do is I right click and I go set to frame size. Okay? Now before I do that, let me show you here. If we go into our effect controls for this, so we're on this clip, these are the effect controls, here's the scale. So it's at 100% right now. So it's at its full 4K size, and that's why we're getting this sort of windowed look at it. So if we then go ahead and do set to frame size, all of a sudden this fits. It's been scaled down to fit into the 1080 space, and you can see here the scale has changed to 50%. And you can change and size this all you want and technically go all the way up to 100% without any image quality loss because all those pixels are there. You're not faking or stretching any. But let's bring this guy back to 50%. And then you can see here, what's happened is everything has been scaled down. It's been compressed a little bit to squeeze into that frame, not compressed like compression like your camera does, but squeezed down. And so you actually get a little bit sharper of an image, a little bit better quality out of it. So we can go ahead and we can play this guy. And now you can see this shot looks the way that we intended when we had shot it. So there we go. Alrighty. So I'm going to take just a brief second here and I'm going to pop us out to our chat. Okay, so Timothy, you were asking about suggestions on 4K camcorders. Now, are you looking for a camcorder specifically, like the camcorder sort of body style and whatnot, or were you looking for just any sort of 4K camera? And I need to know sort of what your requirements are and what your budget is and all that kind of stuff. But my favorite 4K camera right now is the one I'm shooting on, which is the Panasonic GH5. You know, it's about $2,000, so I don't know what your budget is like, but it is absolutely amazing what it can do. And while I'm not using it in 4K right now, it is fully capable of it and it looks incredible. If you do need to do pro audio into it, they do have the XLR1 adapter, so that's an additional cost, but it does make it a very nice portable pro package. So that would be my recommendation at the current moment in time. But you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's even cheaper, and there's a lot of stuff that has everything built into one that are true like ENG camcorder styles. So I'd need a little bit more information. But hopefully that gives you a camera to look at, because right now the GH5 is the hot thing. And with the firmware update coming end of this month, end of September 2017, it's just going to get better and better. But I'll stop fawning over this camera right now, and we'll go ahead and we'll get right back to work. I just wanted to make sure everything was working here and that we didn't have any questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us back into Premiere here. And now I'm going to take you guys through some of the tricks that you can do using the fact that you have all that extra resolution. You know, you've got all this stuff outside of a 1080 window to play with, but what can you do with that? So I'm going to show you guys a few things that you can do with that. So let's go here. Well, jumping ahead. So the very first thing that I want to share with you is that you can reframe. So if you have a shot and there's something in your shot that you didn't want to be in there, or something went a little bit wrong, or you shot it wider than you liked, you want to go a little bit closer, you have the ability to reframe using all of that extra resolution from 4K. So this again, oh, save my project, thank you Premiere. This again is a 4K clip. It is dropped into a 1080p timeline, and I have set it to 50%, set it to size just for our viewing purposes here. So let me go ahead and play this clip for you, and you will see why I would want to reframe it. So it's a beautiful drone shot out in Sedona, Arizona, but there's a problem in that corner. We have drone propellers. The winds were very high, and while I was flying, I had to peg this thing full speed to the side, which caused it to bank, which caused the propellers to get into my shot. So if I were shooting at 1080, I'm pretty much stuck with this, unless I decided to stretch the image out, and then I would lose quality, and I really don't want to do that. So what 4K allows me to do is 4K allows me to increase this size. You know, I won't do that, but you can see I can increase the size, even though this is, yeah, so I can increase the size up to 100% without messing with my pixels. Because up to 100%, I have all those pixels there, so it's no problem. You know, I've got what I need. And so this is a shot that I've moved it around, reframed it a bit, scaled it up a little bit, just enough to keep those propellers out. And what we end up with is this. So the shot's a little bit tighter, but I was able to eliminate those propellers. You know, of course, that one little bit there, they sneak in. But for the majority of that shot, there, those propellers are gone. And that's all because I shot it in 4K. So let's go ahead here. Move to the chat real quick. So Timothy, yeah, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you for chiming in. I hope my answer sort of steered you in the right direction. Like I said, answering what cameras are right for people is a really, really difficult thing, because people have different budgets, different uses, and all sorts of stuff. So it's a hard question to answer, but one of the most common questions that I get. So we don't have a whole lot of chat going on today, but that's okay. I fully understand. It is a beautiful day outside right now here in Northern Virginia, so I'm sure a lot of people at 1 o'clock on a Saturday would rather be out there than sitting inside watching me. But, you know, this is what we get. So let's dive right back in. So another thing that you can do, which sort of works off of this idea of reframing, is create 2 shots out of 1 shot. What I mean by this is something like this. So this is an interview that I shot down in Texas a few weeks ago, pre-hurricane, mind you. But yeah, this is an interview that I shot. I shot it on the GH5, and I shot it in 4K. Now you can see here that the shot is, it's a nice shot. It's pretty wide, and so what 4K allows me to do is, again, play with that reframing thing, and I can move this shot around, and if I wanted the shot to end up like that, I can do that. So that's just reframing again. But here's the tricky part. What if I liked that wide angle too? You know, what I had before. You know, what if I like this, but I also like the close-up? Well, this is where you can fake it. By shooting this in 4K, you can make it look like you had 2 cameras and get a wide and a close-up. And so let's go ahead and play this interview, and I'll show you what I mean. There won't be any audio, because I didn't think you guys wanted to hear the actual interview content, but for the video, at least you'll get the idea. So let's go here. And as we play along, we're in the wide, and all of a sudden we're in a close-up shot. She's talking a little bit in the close-up, and then we come back out to our wide shot here. So now, that works. It is a little bit funky because usually when you do 2 cameras for interviews and stuff like that, you like to get the other camera from a different angle. So yeah, you know, normally you like to be at a different angle, and so this really has, it looks like you have two cameras kind of on top of each other, one getting a close-up and one getting a wide. But for some purposes you can make this work, and essentially you just got a wide shot and a close-up shot with just one shot. Some people will say this is cheating, some people will get on me for it, but you know what, in a pinch, if you have a spot with an interview where you have no B-roll to cover a cut from one thing to another, cutting from that wide to the close-up, man, it's amazing. It's just, it'll save your butt. Trust me. If you do interviews for a living, you'll know what I'm talking about. So let's see here. Actually, I'm gonna come back to this. I'm just gonna double check on our stream because I made myself paranoid now. One thing I have not figured out with this YouTube thing is I have everything pulled up, but how do I see how many people are watching, like at any current moment? I don't know how to do it. So if anybody knows, message me or teach me even throughout the course of this live show if you pop in. Chris, all right, see, thanks for sharing your knowledge. Just starting out with video on my new Canon T7i. For posting to YouTube, do you need to post in 1080 or does YouTube allow for 4K? That's a good question. Thank you for asking. Thank you for joining. But yeah, you can definitely post in 1080. Most things that are posted to YouTube are 1080, but YouTube does accept 4K. So you can upload stuff in 4K to YouTube and it will be viewable in 4K. Down in the little corner where you can select the resolutions, people will be able to select 4K if that video was uploaded in 4K. Now on most people's monitors and phones and maybe televisions, if they're watching on a smart TV, they're not going to be actually seeing the true 4K resolution because they probably only have 1080. But if they do have a 4K smart TV, they can watch it in true 4K. I don't know of any phones that actually have true 4K screens. I might be wrong because tech is moving pretty quick, but I don't think any of those do. But my second monitor here is a 4K monitor, and I can watch 4K YouTube content in 4K. So yes, that was a long answer to the question. But yes, YouTube does allow for 4K. And if you want to upload 4K to YouTube, YouTube also processes it into all of those lesser resolutions, you know, 1440, 1080, 720, all the way down. So if you upload it into 4K, people have the option of 4K and every resolution below. So yeah, 4K on YouTube is a cool thing. And actually, when I first got my Ursa Mini, I went to NAB with it, and I actually shot all of my coverage at NAB 2016 on the Ursa Mini in 4K and uploaded everything in 4K. Everybody thought I was absolutely crazy at the time. They said there's absolutely no reason for that. Yeah, there really wasn't, but it was new. It was a new camera for me. It was my first time being able to upload 4K content to YouTube, and I just did it. So you're asking, is there a time limit on videos on YouTube in 4K? No, there is not. So whatever time limit you're allowed, I don't even know if YouTube does time limits anymore. I remember back in the day where you had to have like a certain number of subscribers to upload a video that was over like 10 minutes long or something like that. I don't think that exists anymore. So no time limits that I know of and everything like that. Devin, hey, how you doing, buddy? Good to see you. Talk about default media scaling in Premiere. So we don't have to resize every 4K clip in our 1080 timeline. That is true. I actually had to turn that off for this. So let me show you guys before we move into the next trick here, what my friend Devin here is referring to. And Devin, I might need you to coach me through where that preference is, but let me show you. So this is specifically for Premiere Pro users. But so when I dropped the clip in, so let me just take this clip out. So when I dropped this clip in, it stays at 4K as opposed to getting scaled. And that's because I asked Premiere to treat it that way, to just leave it alone. But let's see here. Is it in preferences? Might be Devin, help me out here. Not in ingest settings, no. Let's see if it's in preferences. But there is a way when you drop things in, you can tell Premiere when you add timeline. I think it's in here. All right, I can't find it right now. But there is a way in Premiere. It's in one of the settings. But you can go and you can change it. Okay, so edit preferences media. Okay, so let's try it again. I promise. Sorry guys, this is a little off topic, but it is a good trick. So edit. So preferences media. Default media scaling. So you guys see this right here? So you can set it to set to frame size. Okay. And so remember how I dragged this in and I had to right click and go to set to frame size? Now that I've set that, I think it'll take place. Drop it in, boom, automatically it is set to frame size. Automatically set to 50%. And there it is. So thank you very much, Devin, for bringing that up and for even refreshing my memory. But for the purposes of this, I'm going to put it back. But yeah, that's a good that's a good tip. All right, reframing, 2 shots in 1. I'm just getting myself all put back together here. Let me take a peek here, maybe field another question or two if they are in the chat. There we go. Okay, so it looks like we're all caught up here. Thomas, absolutely, no problem at all. Thank you for joining, and if you have any other questions along the way, just hit me up and let me know. Looks like it's getting brighter in here, man. That sun's coming out. I'm getting a little overexposed. Dialing down my aperture light. Almost don't need it at all. There we go. I love remotes for lights, by the way. Completely off topic, but maybe another day, maybe another show. All right, so let's dive right into our next tip here. So I'm going to bring us in. Okay, so we've gone over bringing 4K into a 1080p timeline. We've gone over how you can do some reframing to fix mistakes. And actually in the reframing thing, I didn't even go all the way. This is another purpose for reframing. It's not even saying that there's a mistake in your shot, but this is a shot I did for Aperture, an Aperture microphone review, their deity review. And this was basically the closest I could get with my lens with the minimum focus distance, but I really wanted to get a close-up. So 4K, scaled it up, moved it around, punched it in, and we end up being a heck of a lot closer than my lens actually was because we're just using the center part of that frame. Didn't help my focus. Focus is still off in this shot anyway, but what you gonna do? Nobody's perfect. But yeah, so that's something I had skipped. Sorry about that, guys. So let's see here. Now let's go on to faking motion. So again, we're working with this advantage that we have all of this extra resolution outside of our 1080p frame. So what we want to do, iPhone X, but what we want to do is take advantage of that because this shot right here is pretty boring. It's just a camera spinning in place and some guy spinning it. But I want to make that shot a little bit more dynamic and a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create some fake motion with it. So I'm going to scale it up to about 75%, and I can click and move this guy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the position here and the keyframes. So at the beginning, let's see how far over. See, I can pull it until just where it reaches out of the frame, but I can go, all right, I want it here. Okay, see how it's still fitting inside. and I'm going to put a position keyframe. Then let's say down here, I want the camera to have moved over. To there. So now I've keyframed some motion into this, and what do we end up getting? We get a pan. And that one doesn't look very good, actually. But you get the general idea. So let me go ahead and clear those out. And what I'm actually going to do is, I think I'm actually going to have it go. But yeah, so you get the general idea that you can scale these things up and down and move them in. But the other thing that we can do, let's go ahead and put this back to 50%. Oh, my wife is in here blowing me digital kisses. Hey, baby, I'll see you when you get home soon. Let me put this back in the middle. So we have this here. So right at the center, oh, geez, I'm blowing up all over the place on here. Yeah, my friend's kids got to see the puppies via FaceTime just before the show. But so what we'll do is we'll set the scale, we'll leave it right there. And then down here, actually I'm going to keyframe my position too. So that'll lock the position right there. We want it right there. So let's say we want to end like right up on this lens. Let's take this at the end here all the way to 100%. And let's move this so that it's like right dead center. So now what I've done here is I've keyframed both the position over time and I've keyframed the scale over time to blow up. And what we end up getting, let's go ahead and give you guys this full screen, is we get this sort of fake push-in effect on it. So there you go. Nothing fancy with that example, but you know, all of this came from just a completely static shot. But yep, it all came from a static shot and it allows you to move stuff around. Cool. All right, so let's pull back to the chat just for a second, see if we got anything else new coming through. All right, yeah, there's my wife saying hello. I didn't even know she had a YouTube account. Things I don't know about my wife. But yeah, Ice Entertainment, thanks for joining. Nice tutorial. Can you do a zoom in fade to white? What do you mean? You mean just like what I just did, like the zoom in and then have it disappear to white? Because there's lots of different ways you can do that. You can actually do that with just built-in transitions. Premiere has one called just dip to white that you could put on the end of it and then drag it out, and it would do that. So I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, but let's take a peek here. So I have this zoom in, and then here under your effects, dip to white. That'll make it dip out to white. I'll make it a little bit longer, and then basically this will end fading to white. Well, it dips. It's a dip, so it dips in and out. And then if I wanted to, you could deal with it. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of ways to do that. Or you could even put like a white asset, just so you know, just a white screen after this, and just do a cross dissolve between the two. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways to do that. But let me know if that's actually what you were referring to, because I may have misunderstood. So Thomas, you say, I feel like only small motion works when punching in on 4K. Yeah, usually you don't want to go for big, grandiose moves. You know, you don't want to shoot it and say, oh, I'm just going to replace my slider completely with shooting 4K, or I'm just going to, you know, I'm just going to shoot in 4K, everything static, and make all my cinematic moves, because it doesn't have the same effect, because there's no parallax. What I mean by that is, you know, if I have, let me just bring the chat down. If I have this water bottle here, and my camera is here and is looking at it, there's a certain background that the camera sees from here, but that background will shift in relation to the object as the camera moves. And you don't get that. You don't get that parallax when you're doing it in 4K. So usually just really slow, subtle motions are best. I did an extreme example there, but yeah, just a slow push in or a slow move to the side or stuff like that, just to add a little bit where people sometimes don't even notice that it's happening. Those are when it really, really works the best. Flynn Cooper says, try adding parallax in After Effects as you add a fake pan. I've always wondered if it's possible. I am admittedly not good enough at After Effects to know how to even approach that, but that is an interesting idea. Like, I guess you would make them like 3D objects and duplicate and move the background so you get parallax. But at that point, it seems easier to throw a slider in my bag and just shoot it the way I'm supposed to. You know, these 4K tricks, they're not all perfect, but some of them really will save your butt if you're shooting 4K for 1080. So that's where we're going. So I'm going to dive into the final one that I have listed here, which is stabilization. So I'm sure you've heard before, people always say you can do stabilization if you shoot it in 4K for 1080. Like, well, what difference does it make? I mean, I can stabilize 1080 as well, but there is actually a slight difference and a benefit because you have, again, all that extra resolution to play with and for the computer to work with. And so let me show you here. Here is a clip that I shot just walking through my semi-ghetto neighborhood. I'll be the first to admit it. I'm sure my wife will chime in and agree, but whatever. Just walking through with the GH5. Now, I did have the stabilization in the GH5 turned on, but I wasn't really purposely walking very steady. So we get a shot like this. So it's kind of all over the place here. And so this is that shot done in 4K. And then I also did it again in 1080. And the color difference is just because the sun was changing. There's no sensor difference between 4K and 1080 on the GH5. So, but yeah, so here we go in 1080. Same kind of deal. This one looks like I was doing it on purpose, but so yeah, shaky footage that we want to make smooth. So as we move along here, let's see what we got here. So this is the 1080p clip. And what I've done is I've added warp stabilizer. So warp stabilizer is an effect in Premiere that will work in various ways to smooth out your footage as best as it can. It's not always perfect. But what I did is I set it to stabilize only. It has these options for stabilize, crop, and auto scale. This is the one I usually use. But I want you to pay attention to this, auto scale. It means it's gonna have to do some scaling to make it look right. So just to demonstrate, I left it on stabilize only. And I want you guys to see what happens here. So if we look at the edges of this frame. It's like it's an image that's bouncing around. It looks stable, but there's all this black popping in from the edges. So let me show you guys that again. I'll give it to you full screen so you can really see. So yeah, watch those edges and you can see that Premiere has stabilized it, but it had to move the image around a lot. And so it's not quite fitting. Okay, so that can be an issue. The way that you would fix that is you would then take this, find the spot where it's like the worst, and scale it way up. So you know, scale it. Let's take it to 110%. And you kind of get it to the point where everything fits in and that black isn't dipping in. But the problem is now you've stretched your pixels by 10%. So you're reducing your quality every time you stretch anywhere beyond 100% with this 1080. But let's see what happens when we work with 4K. So here we go. I did the same thing to the 4K clip. So the warp stabilizer is actually in a nested thing. That's a whole different thing. But anyway, this is the 4K clip. Warp stabilizer applied to it. Stabilize only. None of that other fancy stuff. Take a look. okay, it's doing this exact same thing, right? Doesn't look great. But here's our benefit. This is scaled to 50% of its size because it is in a 1080p timeline. And so when we scale that and move it, I only had to pull it to 58%, which means that you are still squeezing down your pixels, actually sharpening your image from your 4K, as opposed to in 1080 where you had to end up stretching your image and decreasing resolution, and you're going to end up with the same kind of results in terms of stabilization, not in terms of quality. Don't get me wrong there. So let's go here, and now you guys can watch this and you get some smooth footage. Obviously it's not perfect, but that was just me shooting it in laziness. But there you go. Your quality is higher and you don't waste any of your pixels. If anything, you're getting sharper images and you just have so much more space to stabilize. Another thing that I didn't demonstrate here necessarily, but in terms of stabilization, is you can actually take, you can actually shoot your shot a little bit wider if you know it's going to be something that needs stabilization. So if you know your framing is going to be like here, maybe you zoom out a little bit and shoot a little bit wider, knowing that once you stabilize, some of the edges are going to get kind of lopped off to compensate for that, and then you have the frame you were looking for in the first place. So that's an interesting one. So let's see here, back to some comments. What shutter speed did you shoot that in? Are you referring to that last clip? If you're referring to the last clips where I shot outside, I was shooting on the GH5 in 4K and 1080, 30p. Always, I have the camera set to 180 degree shutter. So that means I'd be 1/60 for those. So I'm not sure if playing it back through this and then sending it through the stream feed or anything causes any weird effects. You know, it might not be playing as smoothly or whatever. But yeah, it was 180 degree shutter for that. And you said, because if I shoot with the 180 rule, I get blur when I stabilize it. Oh, that's interesting. Stabilizers, the digital ones in Premiere and other programs, I know Final Cut has one as well. They're not always perfect. Sometimes they have issues. I was going very slow in that shot, and I made sure that I was just going in a straight line. Sometimes they have issues with, if you try and do like orbiting shots, you know, it's okay if you go this way, or if it's okay if you go this way, but if you start trying to do both and like orbiting and changing your angles, sometimes they have issues. And if you're moving too quickly, sometimes because of the shutter speed, your details might get a little blurred, and so there's fewer identifiable points for the software to lock onto to figure out what to stabilize. So that can get tricky. So that blurring, you know, may just be that the software is having a hard time. And I'd be interested, try it at a higher shutter speed, especially if you're moving quickly, because that'll give you less motion blur, which means your details in the shot will be more defined. They'll be crisper. You'll have a lot cleaner detail, and maybe the software will be able to pick up on more points without getting confused in the motion blur, and will actually do a better job stabilizing it. So that's my thoughts on that right there. But I think that's it. Let's take a peek. We have, what did I just click? Something beeped at me because it's mad, but whatever. Okay, so we've gone over what 4K is. We got a little background on DCI versus UHD. We dropped some stuff into the timeline, and thanks to our friend Devin Hansen there, we figured out that Premiere Pro can do it automatically for you if you don't want to have to do it manually every time, which is usually what I do. Reframing, we went over the fact that you can get rid of those nasty propellers from your drone shots by reframing in 4K. Say you couldn't get as close and couldn't focus as close on something as you wanted to. Boom. 4K and 1080 lets you get twice as close, 200% in. 2 shots in one, you know, cheating, making it look like I had 2 cameras set up on this interview when only one. Faking motion, moving stuff around. This is a drastic example, but you can create fake little push-ins and side-to-side movements, or, you know, whatever you want by moving around with all that extra resolution outside of the frame. And last but not least, stabilizing. So yeah, those are our benefits there. And let's come on back. So the last thing that a lot of people mention about benefits of shooting in 4K is visual effects. And I don't have a way to demonstrate that because I'm no good at visual effects, so I don't even know where to start. But all you need to really know about that is it's based on the fact that there's just 4 times the resolution and 4 times the data in your image to work with. So you can zoom in, you can do really, you know, really fine masking, really fine color work. You can do all sorts of stuff like that because you have 4 times the amount of information in there to work with. So while I couldn't demonstrate that here, that is another benefit. So let's see here. So Chris, you'd asked about who's watching your live vids. Here's what I found. And then it goes blank. That's about what I found too. No, I'm just kidding. I'm very new to the live streaming thing, and when I get it streaming, I'm too afraid to touch the YouTube window. Like, they have different panels and panes where I could go and like see what's going on and like maybe check different analytics, but I'm just too afraid to touch it during a live stream so far to go and check on this stuff real time. So I'll do a little bit of research after the show and figure out how I can get in there. So let's see here. Flynn, you say, yeah, when I shoot in 120 FPS, so shutter 240, it works great. Yeah, so I think that is an issue with, you know, judging by the speed at which you're moving. The software may be having issue with the motion blur at the 180-degree shutter angle. And so if you get more, obviously 240, 1/240 shutter speed is more, even though it's still 180-degree rule, but it's more than 1/60, so your details should be cleaner. So the software probably has a much easier time picking out those points to help stabilize everything. Chris, to use analytics for all the videos in a channel, log into your YouTube channel, go to the Creator Studio, click on Analytics in the menu, and also find analytics information. Great, awesome, thank you so much. I'll look into that and get myself all set up. I'm getting a lot better at this whole streaming thing, get everything going, and I think I'm getting the hang of it. So now it's getting my creature comforts in order so that I have everything that I want where I want. While, you know, even just 3 shows ago, I was worried about whether it was going to work or not. So there we go. Shiznuts, nice name. Hi, Premiere guy, I see. What about DaVinci 14 though? So yeah, I am a Premiere guy. I have been a faithful Premiere guy forever, since high school. It's what I learned on, it's what I stuck with. While everyone else was Final Cut 7 in college, I was I was a PC kid. And now I'm like surrounded by Apple products. But I've stuck with Premiere the whole way. And I do like Premiere, but I do also have Resolve. I don't have 14 because I haven't upgraded to it. I haven't paid to upgrade. But I do have Resolve because I have Blackmagic Ursa Mini and it came with it. And I really am impressed with some of the stuff that's happening with DaVinci Resolve. And I want to take some classes and I want to learn some stuff because I'm open to the fact that in the foreseeable future, my whole workflow, editing and everything, may shift over to Resolve. They're just pulling off some amazing stuff. So I don't know anything about it in terms of using it. I'm really bad with it. I can barely do anything. But yes, it is an option out there. So Devin says, maybe show how to do an ease in and ease out on your virtual camera moves. Yeah, that's a good one. Let's see here. So let's go in here. Chris, I did see the follow-up for the rest of that. Sorry, I saw your answer got split in half there, but thank you for looking that up. So what Devin was talking about. Devin, I'm just gonna have you on the freaking show as soon as I figure out how to get Skype patched into this thing and still run everything. So he was talking about this fake motion with the keyframes. So let me move these keyframes up a little bit, and you'll see what happens is it comes to kind of a hard stop. Bink, you know, it's kind of awkward. You want it to be sort of smooth. You can right click and you have all these different options. So you have ease in and ease out. So I can ease in, and this should come to a much smoother finish. Did you see that? So instead of just coming to a jerking halt, it eases to the stop. And it's the same thing with the keyframes up front. So here it would just be sitting, and then boom, starts going. With this, ease out, ease out. I think I did that right. And it should slowly start going. And that's a quick move because I shortened the length of time in between. But that's a good little thing for keyframes. So good tip there, Devin. Thank you very much for that. I need you to just like a little earpiece in my ear, just saying, teach them this, teach them that. That'd be great. But let's see here. When you shoot at 4K, do you use the Atomos or direct to cards? Lee Love asked me. I actually do both. So the project where I showed the interview from that I shot the GH5, the woman standing in the gym, that's a project for paying clients, and I wanted to shoot it in 4K, and I want to make sure that everything is absolutely safe. So I was shooting both internally in 4K to the GH5 and recording ProRes 422 4K on the Atomos Shogun that I had attached to it. I don't have an Inferno, I just have the original Shogun, so I can't do 4K 60, so everything was 4K 30, but that was fine for me. So I record to both. It ends up being a ton of data, but for client projects, that gives me redundant copies, it gives me ProRes to work with for editing, and it gives me the H.264 files off of the cards, which I can keep as backups or proxies or whatever I may need. I just have them. So I recorded to both. And so I record to both whenever I can. Actually, even with that short clip where I was outside walking in my neighborhood to do the stabilization test, I strapped the Shogun to the top of it and I recorded ProRes directly to the Shogun. So it's probably excessive, but I mean, excessive is pretty much the name of my game, I guess. So let's see here. Anish 3D. MacBook Pro i7, 16 gigs of RAM. Is it good for Final Cut Pro editing? That I can't answer. I don't. I'd have to. Are you talking about the new MacBook Pros? I'm assuming that it would be, but don't take my word for it. I haven't tested all these laptops. I do edit on Mac. I do have a late 2013 MacBook Pro 15-inch that's like spec'd out. I can edit 4K fine on that. And especially since Apple now is tailoring their hardware specifically to their software, meaning that Final Cut really makes great use of the hardware that they have inside. I would assume that on one of their newer machines using their software Final Cut, that 4K should be fine. But I can't give you any definitive 100% answers. So, NV creators, is it necessary that we use the correct plugin for the correct camera during post-production in editing software? I'm not sure what you mean by plugin. So please, if you can, give me another comment there and clarify for me what you mean by plugin. I mean, in Premiere, are you referring to the timeline? Because when you create a new sequence, you get asked for, you know, the type. And no, it really doesn't make a big issue. You can drop any kind of camera. You know, you could create an airy, you know, footage timeline and drop DSLR footage into it. It works. You're just going to have to do a little bit of, you know, preview rendering to get it to the to play back a little bit better and a little bit smoother. But if that's what you're referring to, no. I mean that if we use RED cameras. I've only edited RED footage twice, and I did it on a MacBook Pro, my MacBook Pro 15-inch, the late 2013 one that I was talking about. And I was using Premiere. I just see your new comment. So that you have to use Red Cine plugin for Final Cut. I'm not a Final Cut guy, so I don't know. It's possible. Final Cut may require a plugin that you could download to handle that stuff. I even remember my Canon XF300, one of my older cameras, has it shoots in an MXF format, and apparently Final Cut, you had to download a special plugin for that. I mean, Canon provided it for free, but it was an MXF codec thing for Final Cut that you pop it in there, and it would work. So it's possible, but I don't know because I'm not a Final Cut guy, so I'm just kind of talking. Every camera gives a separate key for their raw footage. That may be true. I mean, the only camera I have that shoots raw is the Blackmagic Ursa Mini 4.6, and it's not necessarily a key, but it definitely works better with their software. You have a lot more tools working with the raw settings in DaVinci Resolve than you do in Adobe Premiere. Adobe Premiere will take it, some of it. It'll take the uncompressed raw. It won't take the compressed raw. It's a whole different thing. But let's just say it'll take it, but you get a lot more functionality with their software. So that may be true. I'm not sure. So yeah, we're winding down here. We've been going for, I think, just about an hour, maybe a little less. But anyway, we're coming up on 2 o'clock, and I'm going to have to cut out of here in just a minute or two because my wife and I are actually going to look at a house. We're looking at purchasing a house. So we're in the market. We got a lot of stuff to look at, a long way to go. But we got one to look at 3, so we're going to have to hit the road. One more thing. Which ratio is best for shooting? 4:2:2 or 4:4:4? Okay, so you're talking about color space now. So that is a whole different ball game. 4:2:2 is a certain color space. 4:4:4 is an even higher color space. So technically, which one is best for shooting? The higher one would be. But like everything, there's caveats. You're going to have huge file sizes. And what are you using it for? Are you doing green screen work? Are you doing severe compositing work? Then yeah, the 4:4:4:4's color spaces are going to be fantastic. But for most things, 4:2:2 is good. So, and for a lot of cameras internally, 4:2:2 is what we're trying to get them to. A lot of cameras shoot 4:2:0, and that's one of the big things with the GH5 is that it'll do 4:2:2 internally. So 4:2:2 is a pretty safe. I don't even want to call it middle of the road because, like I said, it is great. But if you do have something where you need to go ridiculously high, like 4:4:4:4, then you need 4:4:4:4. There's no cut and dry answer. But for the most part, when I'm shooting with ProRes, recording to my my Atomos, I just do ProRes 4:2:2. I don't even do 4:2:2 HQ. I usually just do 4:2:2. Okay, last thing that I'm going to do here. Anish has asked me, give you guys my computer configuration. So I am on an iMac 27-inch. In fact, hang on a sec. Let me do this. Is that gonna show? Okay, so I can't show you the specs because it gives my serial number. But I will tell you. So I am on a 27-inch late 2013 iMac, 3.5 gigahertz Intel Core i7 processor, 32 gigs of DDR3 RAM at 1600 megahertz, and the graphics card in it is an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 780M, 4096 megabytes of RAM on that sucker. So there you go. That's what I'm using. It's late 2013, but I'll tell you, this thing is a beast. So there you go. And Michael Pierce, 4444. Yeah, look it up. There's 4 4s there. That's it's a crazy ProRes format, but it's because, I think it's because it includes like some additional channels of information. I want to say alpha channels, but I'm not sure if that's true. I think it's true. So I think there's the 3 color channels, and then I think it has an alpha channel thing. So there's 4444 ProRes. It's crazy. But anyway, guys, I'm going to bring this to a close because, like I said, we got to be hitting the road pretty soon to go look at a house. I really appreciate all you guys hanging out and joining in here. Please feel free, if you have any other questions that pop into your mind about using 4K for 1080 or even anything else, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I always check on my comments, and I try to reply to every single one, or at least give them a thumbs up if I'm in a hurry or something like that. But yeah, like I said, I'm going to be doing these live shows every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and I have actually lined up our show for next week. So let me show you what we're going to be talking about next week. Next week, we are going to talk about log footage. When should you shoot in log? When should you not shoot in log? What the hell is log? And yeah, so I'm going to go over all of that stuff. And I'll set up some examples and stuff because I shoot a lot of log footage. I shoot a lot of not log footage. And so I'll field your questions and share with you guys all about log. So that will be next Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I really appreciate all you guys joining me today, and I really hope to see you guys in the next one next week. And you guys have a great week. Anyone who's down in the Florida area, please be safe, please be careful. I know we've got that big storm coming through, basically tonight and tomorrow. So be safe down there if you're down there. And you guys, take care of yourselves. Like, subscribe, share, let people know about this show, and I will see you guys next week.